Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Skating Penguin Network Mailbag. I am Garrett Bahana. Joined alongside me is my two co-hosts in Snail and Robbie Noggle. We have some more questions to answer for you as we inch ever closer to Christmas and the start of 2024. But without further ado, let's answer some of these questions that pertain to the Penguins, hockey, life in general. Let's get into it. Robbie, you get question one. Snail gets number two. I get question three. And we will go in that order until all these questions are complete. Question one, Robbie, for you comes from Brian. A very simple, straightforward question. Brian wants to know if we should take a boys' trip to Vegas to watch the NHL, I'm assuming the NHL draft in the Vegas sphere.
Heck, why not? I mean, that's going to be impressive. If you've seen anything from inside of it, I'm sure it's going to be um, all tripped out for. Again, this is going to be the last draft as we know it before it decentralizes in 2025. So I guess enjoy it while you can because the NHL, if you're doing something good, you might as well blow it up and then use some excuses uh, as to why. But yeah, I think you're going to see this more and more if the Sphere stays around. The NHL, it looks like, will be the first professional sports league to host their draft there. So it'll be very cool to see, very neat to see how they do it. Plenty of screen to fill up. So hey, if you want to take, I've wanted to take a trip. I've been to Vegas. I don't know if anybody else has been to Vegas, but I've been there. It's a cool city. Now in June, it might be a little toasty, but hey, the sphere's inside. I'm assuming it's air conditioning. So hey, let's make it happen. I'm sure it'll be a good time, and I'm sure it's going to be on the itinerary of a lot of hockey fans this summer. So it should be a good time. Question number two, going over to Snail here. Could you see the Penguins trying to bring Patric Hornqvist in as a coach sometime in the future?
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is something that I hadn't really thought a whole lot about, but when I watched that Florida Penguins game, I was curious if maybe Sullivan had a chat with Horny. I got a couple quotes here that are taken from the Athletic, and these are this is from his time in Florida. This was written in I believe like June of this year, still technically. Um, Paul Maurice had some dialogue here regarding Hornquist, and he says Hornquist is in the coaches' meetings. He's in the player meetings. He often sits right next to Bill Zito in the general manager's booth during games, looking very much like a fellow executive. So he's half doctor, half coach, certainly a bar setter for the ability for an injured player to come back and play. He will be able to take his work ethic and his insight to the game and apply it to wherever he wants, whether it's coaching or managing or developing or scouting. Whatever he decides to do, I do believe that he will be a lifer in the game. Again, that's from Paul Maurice, and this is when Horny was sitting out with the concussion, which was probably incredibly difficult for him. So to hear from the coach that he's, being as engaged as he would be had he been playing is a sign that he probably knew the writing was on the wall for his career, but nevertheless he managed, not managed. Nevertheless, he remained engaged. Bill Zito had some comments on him as well. He said pretty much similar things as Paul Maurice, saying he could be a coach, he could be a development coach, he could work in management, scouting. I think it's his nature to do a lot of that anyways. He's a pretty significant personality and resource. And Horny even had some comments regarding his post playing career, and those being, I love the game, I want to give back to the game, and that's why I try to be around as much as I can in different positions as well to see where the game can take me when I'm done playing. So I just did, from the Hornquist that we know through glimpses of his playing days when he was in Pittsburgh, and maybe if you ever watched any of the off ice stuff that the Penguins put out of him, just a true just a ball of energy. He cares so much. He really helped transform that Penguins team. I believe he was a very key piece in the back to back cups when they acquired him from Nashville, and what a shot in the arm he would be to come back to Pittsburgh. It's not, if he went into coaching, I mean, I feel like there's a list of other teams that would probably want to hire him in some capacity because they also know what he brings. But Jesus Christ, like think about, like, him behind the bench, he could definitely inject a little bit of juice, I believe, from behind there and kind of get some of these players playing maybe with a little bit more jam and juice, because I think he definitely provided that on the ice and definitely holding people accountable in the locker room. So I'm all for it. I would love to see it. Whether it happens or not, we'll see in the future. But it sounds like he's all but set up for a coaching gig at some point, maybe in his career in some capacity. All right, question 3 here from Brian going over to Garrett. So Garrett can meet Hunter at the home opener, but not the 4th unofficial member of the pod. A little salty. As far as I'm concerned, his basement treatment is well-deserved.
I'll remember this statement that Brian gave to me in the future. Brian, I hate to put you on blast because you are the unofficial 4th member of the podcast, but famous people like myself, we only have so much to give. There's only so much to go around, and the more famous you get, the and into those higher tiers, when you start to mix around and bump shoulders with the elite, as I like to call them, there's only so much that I can give to the commoners, and unfortunately, when I was at the home opener, I couldn't be seen mingling with such commoners. I had to stay in my very elite bubble, and if that soured you on me a little bit, I do apologize. But if you want my autograph, just reach out to me, DM. It'll be a flat rate charge, and you pay for the autograph, pay for shipping, and I can give that to you as well. And that's just, again, it was a spur of the moment thing. I do apologize for not being able to see you in the home opener, but maybe the commoners like you and like Snail and like Robbie will be lucky to see me face to face again in the future.
How quickly the little people get forgotten. Are you Garrett Donald Trump Bahana over here?
I've met you before, and I'm taller than you.
Hey, you can't be telling everybody the secrets.
The height thing. Jeez, that's just a shrapnel.
He called us a commoner.
I mean, these guys, Brian, these guys are Pittsburgh guys. These guys are kind of big deals in Pittsburgh, I hear, so I'm not super surprised. It's all gone to their head.
Robbie may be taller than me, but in my defense, like 97% of the world population is probably taller than me.
I mean,
too.
Fair. I mean, even Pat's probably taller than you. So, like,
no, you know what? I saw him too at the he and Hunter were at the home opener. I am taller than him by like an inch or two. So
okay.
He's 5'2", I think 5'2", 5'3". I'm 5'5", so I have that to hang my hat on.
Yeah.
Garrett, do they have a suite for you Pittsburgh guys at the Penguins games in the pressers?
They do, as a matter of fact. With Robbie being in Johnstown, that's a little bit of a more distant trek to PPG than for me. So more often than not, I'm just the lone person in the Pittsburgh suite. But every couple of games, Robbie can take in at PPG. He definitely gets use of that suite too, I'm sure.
Every time some chaos is happening on the ice, they pan to Dubas and Spezza, and then they just kind of pan over to you because they look for your reaction as well.
I'm just stuffing my face with like the free nachos and pretzel nuggets. Yeah, that's absolutely.
I love it.
Alrighty, going back to Robbie here. Question 4. Do we find it ironic? This question comes from Brian, by the way. Do we find it ironic that a career goon is it George? Yeah, George Peros is the head of player safety. But in doing some research, Brian found that he was born, I did not know this, he was apparently born in Washington, Pennsylvania, which is pretty cool considering how relatively close that is to Brian, as well as to me. That's like 25 minutes. Washington, Pennsylvania is like 25 minutes from my house. So I did not know he was born in Washington. But Robbie, is it ironic that a career goon is basically heading up the Department of Player Safety?
So, yeah, I will hit on the second part of this question first, that he is from Washington, Pennsylvania, or the Pittsburgh area. I do remember that being said during his playing days. So, yes, he is one of the Pittsburgh representatives in the NHL at one point. As for the first part, of course, it's ironic, and it's been kind of a running joke on hockey social media for years now that the guy in front of at the head position of the player safety is a former Goon. When it was Brendan Shanahan, you can see when the suspension started to change. The Matt Cook suspension was under Brendan Shanahan. The Rafi Torres suspension was under Brendan Shanahan. You don't really see those kind of suspensions much more outside of Wilson got 20 games or something like that that one season. You don't see the hefty suspensions coming out like they did under Brendan Shanahan. Brendan Shanahan was a skill guy. He understood the beating those guys go through, and he understood the importance of protecting your stars. George Peros is basically the exact opposite of Brendan Shanahan and has kind of taken the Department of Player Safety in a completely different direction. A guy that was a fighter, was a bruiser, and it's definitely no mistake that the player safety has changed quite dramatically under George Peros' leadership. Question number 5, and for the first time in this mailbag set, we are switching up the question asker to Kim Larson. If one of the cities that has had an NHL franchise could get it back, which city would you pick?
Quebecois, the Nordiques. I've got no stake in that game, but like, dude, just hockey. When hockey is good in Canada, it's better. I think it's overall better for the sport. I swear to God, if there is any more rumblings of a team going back to Atlanta, like I'll be upset for sure.
You're gonna see it. I guarantee you, it happens probably before 2030. That's my guess.
I have so much issue with like I hope the NHL doesn't expand anymore for my lifetime. It's already such a watered down league. I think it is watered down a little bit. There's too many. 32 teams is a shit ton of teams in this league, and if they want to move to, they're not going to move to 33. They'll move to 34 to make it even. Probably one on the east and one on the west. I don't want to see it. This whole thing of Bettman's agenda to put hockey in the South, it's great. You don't need to tell me how it's benefited the game. I've seen it. Tampa winning cups, the Ducks getting their cup in Anaheim, the Kings getting their cups, San Jose being relevant in such a dominant team for so long. I mean, there's a hockey culture in California where, before Gretzky's trade from Edmonton to LA, was there even much of one to speak of? Probably not. I get it. But the game is well established right now, and I think that Canada deserves a little bit. They deserve a little something. They haven't won a cup since '93. They've been in some cup finals. May I add some forgettable cup finals? I think it was like Edmonton, Carolina that one year, and then Montreal and Tampa Bay during COVID. So just give them a little something. And I think having a renewed rivalry up there in Quebec would be, I think it'd be great. Like I would tune in if it was Canadians Nordiques. I'm turning that on. Like if it's a hockey night in Canada night, I'm watching that because those rivalry games are the best things in hockey. It's where even if one's out of the playoff in November and the other one's whatever, a dumpster fire too, it brings the best out of a competition like that. So I would give it to the Nordiques and definitely not Atlanta. I'd be curious, especially like Robbie. What do you think about this? Bringing a franchise back to a place that has already had one.
Hartford.
Oh shit, that's a good one too.
Yeah,
Hartford.
Hartford's. I mean, I can't like debate with the Quebec one. I think that would be fantastic.
The Hartford jerseys are pristine.
They're the best. That's the best color scheme in going.
They really are. Yeah, they're just when the Hurricanes wear them, they're perfect. They're so good, and they had so many different versions of them too throughout the years. They'd add in some navy and stuff like that. They're really good, and that's the one that if I had to pick one, it would be Hartford. But Quebec is also not a bad option. I really do like that idea. I think it'd be obviously a great rivalry with Montreal. And again, their jerseys are absolutely phenomenal too. So, but if I had to pick, I would pick Hartford.
Dude, now that you mentioned Hartford, I agree. I think having, the Northeast is already so there's so much hockey in the Northeast or whatever, giving Hartford a team, I don't know. I could see why there's an argument not to. I also heard, like, I don't know if maybe Robbie, you had heard this too back in the day, but like they weren't exactly like killing it with like packing the seats or keeping fans in the building like at times. Did have you heard that as well, or is that maybe?
Yeah, there's more than just like, obviously every time they talk about a franchise moving, Quebec is always like the big name that pops up, but there's definitely some I'm trying to think of the right word, but definitely some prohibitive of obstacles to getting a team there in Quebec full time. They did not have a great time filling the stands back in the 90s before they left. So it would be interesting to see what they do to get a team back there. I just don't think, as much as people want them there, it's in the cards, at least for relocation at the moment.
For sure. It's actually, with Hartford, it's also like almost a crime that they just don't have that jersey going in the league right now. I mean, forget the city, just like the color scheme in the jerseys, it's like a crime to be holding that back from the public eye. All right, moving on here to, I believe, question 6, going to Garrett again. And Brian says, spoke to Garrett about this, but the podcast hasn't been coming through on Apple Podcasts, so I have to listen to it on Spotify, which I'm not the biggest fan of. Hopefully the issue has been fixed. Spotify is the enemy along with UPS.
Yes, the enemy along with UPS. I have spoken to Brian about this recently, and this will basically go for anyone else who might consume our podcasts through Apple Podcasts or iTunes or whatever it is. I was notified the other day from someone at Fans First Sports Network that there had been an ongoing issue between our podcast feeds, not just us here at the Skating Penguin Network, but basically every podcast feed at Fans First. And a lot of those podcast feeds came over in the migration from SB Nation earlier in 2023 when we migrated into this new Fans First Sports Network gig. And it was an issue that was stemming from these feeds and an ID password combination that we didn't have, that the higher ups at our old company had. It's a very long, convoluted story. The quick, short answer is that I reached out to Brian, who reached out to many of us through Fans First who were having these issues with Apple Podcasts. He reassured us that the issue would be taken care of. It was described as sort of a mass exodus plan that Brian was describing. Long story short, I believe, I'm not certain, but I believe that he has sent a list of shows to the folks at Apple Podcasts to have this issue rectified in the future. If it hasn't been rectified already, we're recording this on December 21st. I would imagine that it would be rectified before 2023 is out the door. So if anyone else is having issues with Apple Podcasts, let myself know, Snail know, let Robbie know. If you're having issues, shoot us a DM or something like that on Twitter, and I can pass that along to Brian Salvatore, who one of the heads at Fans First, and we can see if we can get that resolved sooner rather than later. But that has been brought to my attention through multiple people, not just Brian at this point. So hopefully this issue will be resolved sooner rather than later.
I hope I'm not wrong, but I believe it's already resolved, because this morning when I checked my phone when I woke up, I had a new uploaded Skating Penguin Network coming through my Apple Podcasts, so it could be already fixed.
And that, that may be, like I said, that may be true. I'd have to go back. I actually don't regularly use Apple Podcasts myself, but I will have to go through and see. Well, I'll take your word for it, Snail. I have no reason to see why you'd be lying anyway. But yeah, if it's already resolved, then fantastic.
I just thought it was weird because it's like, because sometimes I listen to Spotify. I listen to podcasts. I don't have any allegiance to where I get my podcasts, but I have Spotify as well. But I saw that the Apple Podcasts, it downloaded the mailbag that we recorded on Monday, but it just popped in today. So I don't know. I'm sure everyone can go check it out for themselves, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's already been fixed as of this recording.
Alrighty. With that, we will move on to question 7. Going back to Kim Larson here. This question is for Robbie. Robbie, what do you think about the situation with the Arizona Coyotes and their ongoing arena issues? Isn't it a bit laughable that this NHL franchise plays in an arena that can only host 5,000 spectators?
I mean, of course it is, but does the NHL care? Absolutely not, because they're going to do anything they can to make sure that franchise remains afloat. Every day you kind of get some news about they might have an arena deal out in the desert somewhere. They lost their lease at their old arena. They looked like they were gonna move. Then it looked like they had a deal done, but they got voted down. Then it again looked like they were gonna move, and we were talking about relocation options, and now it looks like there might be an arena deal back on somewhere else. So when it comes to the Arizona Coyotes, it's tough to say. I will note though that there have been people that have attended games at the Coyotes' place of residence that they are currently borrowing from the Arizona State University Sun Devils, and it is actually a pretty fun time to be there. It probably actually feels like there's fans at the game, given Arizona's lack of attendance over the years. So 5,000 probably better fitting for them. And I guess the good news is they have a pretty fun and exciting team. They're kind of floating around a playoff spot right now. They have some young names, obviously. So hopefully something works out. They do wear the beautiful, we talked about the old throwback Quebec and Hartford jerseys. The Kachina Arizona jerseys are obviously phenomenal jerseys. And I'm actually not, I was never anti the desert red jerseys either with the Howling Wolf on. I actually thought those were actually pretty solid uniforms with really nice color. But is it laughable they're playing in it's unserious, I think is probably the right word. But I guess keep your ear out and keep your ear to the ground to see what news might come out, because it feels like every week we get a different story that they have an arena deal or they're going to be moving to like San Antonio or something. So, pay attention to that. Number 8 here, question 8 from Kim. Which is worse, the Flyers winning the Stanley Cup in the next 3 seasons, or the Penguins franchise being moved to a new arena in Toledo and renamed the Toledo Penguins?
So which one is worse? I don't know, because there's a Toledo, Washington, and if the Penguins move to Toledo, Washington, I'm all for that. I think that would be fantastic. It's a small town in the basin, and it's kind of closer to the Portland, Washington border. I'd probably move closer to there and just keep doing what I do. Nothing in my life would change. The Flyers winning the cup for the next 3 seasons, I don't know, like that sucks. But having the Penguins move to, and I'm just kidding about Toledo. It's probably like what Toledo, is there a Toledo, Ohio too?
Yeah.
Is that the one you guys are probably more familiar with, is Toledo, Ohio?
Yep.
Okay. That would suck. Like that would be way worse. I think. I mean, honestly, like I guess I'd be more curious how you guys feel being Pittsburgh residents. Which one would sting more for you? Because I would have to say them moving to the dump that is Ohio is got to suck with the legacy that it was built in Pittsburgh.
I don't know how many people who listen to this podcast live in Toledo. The only times I've been in Toledo, Ohio are when I am traveling up to Michigan to see relatives, and we stop at like one of those highway rest stop areas to get out, pee, and get something to eat.
Basically,
And
you only go there to take a dump.
yeah, honestly, that I'm not even kidding. But I mean, what would suck more, the Flyers winning the Stanley Cup over the next 3 seasons, or the Penguins relocating, I would probably say relocation. The Penguins have flirted with relocation so many times in their history, and like a couple of times it seems like they were quite close to leaving Pittsburgh. So for me, like it would suck for like the first week if the Flyers won the Stanley Cup, but then I'd get over it because I still have a hockey team in my market that I could cheer for. So relocation for me would definitely be worse.
I think that's the safe bet. Robbie, you got anything you want to chime in on this? How do you feel about Toledo, Ohio?
I don't think I've ever been to Toledo, Ohio, but relocation would absolutely be worse. It sucked when they had the rumors surrounding them back in the early Crosby days, and I really don't want to go through with that. I like having the Penguins in Pittsburgh. I would happily trade a Flyers Stanley Cup or two to make sure the Penguins are in Pittsburgh for the rest of my lifetime.
I like the way you worded that. Maybe that's the better ways. You trade a Flyers Stanley Cup or maybe two, three, maybe even to keep the Penguins in Pittsburgh. There you have it, Kim. All right, Garrett, question number 9. And that is, which of the 2 latest expansion drafts was the worst? Speaking on the Vegas expansion draft in 2017 and then the recent one with Seattle here. Where did the Penguins lose the most?
So everyone always says that hindsight is 2020, but even in the moment of the Seattle expansion draft, where I think at that point the Penguins had already traded, or didn't they trade Jared McCann?
Yes,
at that
they
point,
did.
Yeah. So they trade Jared McCann, and then Toronto leaves him exposed. I believe that's how it went, if my memory serves. And then on top of that, the Penguins lose Brandon Tanev because they left him exposed too. So they lose Brandon Tanev and Jared McCann. Jared McCann, I would literally kill something or someone to have Jared McCann or Brandon Tanev, either or, on this roster on December 21st, 2023. Between the two, I'd rather have McCann, but either or would be a massive improvement to this team's depth in the bottom 6. Jared McCann has become, like, in the short time he's been in Seattle, he's become a franchise pillar.
First line left winger, scored 40 goals last year.
And can you believe it? And while he was in Pittsburgh, everyone said, "Oh, McCann is too streaky. He's too streaky. He's not a good player." I would do so many horrible things to have Jared McCann back on this roster right now. I'm not even kidding. So, like, the Penguins lost Fleury to Vegas, but like everyone sort of saw the writing on the wall at that point. Even Fleury himself knew what was going to happen. So Fleury was a fan favorite, and he's always going to be a fan favorite here. Like, that's not going to change. But losing Jared McCann at like 25 years old and Brandon Tanev, that is just malpractice. And they didn't have to. Like,
they lost Fleury and they had Murray though. They lost Tanev and they brought in that Brock McGinn or whatever. Yep. And where's he now? Is he even in the league still?
I don't think so.
And then you lost McCann for nothing to Toronto. They left him exposed. He was a first round pick of, like, I think Vancouver's. He fights. He's tougher than shit, and he can score 40 goals. He can score 40 goals. He can snipe. He can dish. He's a play, like, dude. It's just there's been a gaping hole since that expansion draft.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The Penguins protected Jeff Carter, didn't they? They chose to protect Jeff Carter over, and at the time I remember people were up in arms about that decision because I'm still not over it. Like, it is wild to me how that expansion draft played out and how badly the Penguins fumbled that entire process.
Dude, you think Ron Francis was going to take Jeff Carter off of that exposed list? Like, dude, Ron Francis is a brilliant GM. He wasn't going to touch that guy.
And
was it just like, would you think that was like a Hextall Jeff Carter like showing of respect? Because that was like Hextall's guy. They were together in LA. He brought him into Pittsburgh. Do you think he was like showing Jeff Carter like, I got you? Like,
I have to think so. I have to think so. I have no reason to believe otherwise because the Hextall Carter relationship is just, and the Penguins are still paying for it. They're going to pay for it until the end of the season when Carter's contract finally comes off the books. But It's just to this day I can't get over how badly they fumbled the Seattle expansion. So there's my answer for that question, Kim. Question 10, as we go back to Robbie, this question also comes from Kim Larson. Robbie, do you think Malkin is good enough to play on 3-on-3 overtime these days, or do you think he's just not fast enough on the skates anymore? And is he possibly taking too many unnecessary chances? And I would say possibly too many unnecessary penalties, if you want to throw that in there as well.
I mean, Malkin's always taken way too many unnecessary penalties, but that's kind of, you live with the good. You take the bad and live with the good. But I mean, in a 3-on-3 overtime, I think you just got to put your best options out there, and Malkin's still one of them. Whether or not he's as fast as he was, he's obviously not. The turnovers, again, he's always turned the puck over. He's always taking bad penalties. But no, I'm still throwing him out there. Not as my first option. Obviously, Crosby's the first option. But I mean, he's still your second or third best option to put the puck in the back of the net. And you take the good with the bad. And he's one of your best options. It's 3-on-3. You got to put your biggest guns out there. And I'm still pro Malkin in 3-on-3 overtime. The turnover, but again, anybody can turn the puck over. Maybe he's a little sloppier with it than others. That's nothing new with the way he plays. He's definitely not as fast, but he still demands a lot of respect when he's on the ice. He can still score from anywhere. He can still dangle in the phone booth. So I like Malkin on the 3-on-3 just because the pedigree is still there in that situation, that he can use his exploits to take advantage of the defense and get chances on net. Question number 11 from Kim again. Do NHL teams have their own airplanes, or how do they fly around?
So I think only one team in the NHL has their own plane that they own, and that's the Red Wings. I think the Detroit Red Wings are the only team in the NHL to own their own plane, where other NHL franchises, I think every other one, all the 31 other ones have just, like probably like contracts or deals that are lucrative for both the airline and convenient for the teams for all the travel that they do. I actually have, if you really want to know, and this is 8 months old, so this could have changed by now, but it looks like the Penguins, they fly in a Boeing 737 through Aero Airwaves, and there's a bunch of teams. Delta has a bunch of contracts with teams. Aero Airwaves has the Coyotes, Bruins, Sabres, Hurricanes, Blackhawks, Blue Jackets, Dallas, Stars, Predators, Devils, Islanders, Blues, Penguins. So it's like Air Canada has a contract with a lot of teams in the West here, and a couple of Canadian teams out east. Delta's got the other group of them, and then it looks like the Sharks are the only one that use Kaiser Air Inc. And then the Detroit Red Wings own a 737. So that's how the teams get around. When I saw that question, I never really even thought about that, because we know that they don't use. There was a time where teams used commercial air. Like, you'd be getting on a flight to go to wherever, and like the team was also hopping on that flight. You might be sitting next to like Chris Pronger or something, but not anymore. They've got these contracts worked out to where they're not flying with fellow pedestrians like us, because I'm sure that would get old. All right, question 12 from Kim Larson. Do any of you know how it works when all the players' moms and dads are gathered together to watch games?
Yeah, the family trips have become really popular, I think, in recent years, and they're magnified by social media. And the Penguins' dad's trip that they just had is, I only found this out by writing through Pens Points on Pennsburg. It's sponsored by Highmark. They have an official sponsor for this dad's trip, which I think is absolutely hilarious and sad at the same time that everything has to be sponsored in this day and age. But going back to the original question, I think the Penguins are the Penguins just pay for like airfare and hotels, probably, because the dad's trip is what, 3-4 games, if that. And then everyone just like ends up going their separate ways. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Penguins just cover airfare and hotels. I mean, they do it for their players. They probably just add on a couple of extra days for moms or dads or whoever comes along on these trips too. So I would wager a bet and say that's probably all taken care of through the franchises themselves. Question 13. We have a two-parter here from Kim Larson as we go back to Robbie. Robbie, if you should choose one, which one would you choose? Option 1, you have to be inside Gritty for 15 games and the All-Star weekend. And in parentheses, Kim says, every game you don't cheer for the Flyers and pump up the crowd, you will get one more game added on to your Gritty list. Or option 2, you have to live a full year without the internet.
That's a pretty easy choice one. Sorry. I'll cheer for the Penguin or the Flyers for 15 games and keep my internet connection. Thank you very much. Mostly because it's a crucial part of my job is having internet. But I mean, again, you're in the suit. Nobody knows who you are. Whatever. I mean, Gritty, I mean, he's his own like cult figure to begin with. So like, you're like, if you're in that suit, you're basically the most beloved person in Philadelphia. And the one person they probably all don't want to mob and kill all the time anyway. So yeah, give me the Gritty suit. I mean, the list of people that have been Gritty is very short. You might as well name your name. You might as well put your name in that tier of historic figures. I mean, nobody would know who you are, but you can always say that you were Gritty, even if nobody believes you. So I will take 15 games as Gritty at wherever, I guess, at Philly and at the All-Star weekend, whatever, to keep my internet hooked up. So that's an easy trade-off for me. Maybe for others, they are that against cheering for the Flyers, but for me, I could stomach it for that long to be able to keep my job and keep myself sane for the 15 days or for the other non-Gritty days. Let's put it like that. Kim Larson with question 14. Last but not least, Snail's wrapping us up here. If you could pick one player from each team in the Metro Division, who would you pick?
Well, when I get asked these kinds of questions, I get all too literal. I'm thinking about if there was some sort, I get shell brain as I call it. But I'll go down the list here, and I'll probably ask for a little bit of help here from Robbie and Garrett, because there's some obvious ones from some of these teams in the Metro, but then there's some that are maybe a little bit not like less obvious. Let's just go down the list here. I'm on NHL.com, the Metropolitan Division. We'll start with the team at the top from the Rangers. I was thinking about it, and that goalie in Shesterkin from the Rangers, that's a guy that it's pretty hard not to pluck off their roster. But Jari's playing good. Nadal, I kind of like the Penguins goalie tandem right now. So I think a guy I would go for from the Rangers would be a Chris Kreider. I think Chris Kreider as a top 6 left winger with speed and grit, and he's a net front guy. I think he, for me, is the obvious answer to pluck from the Rangers roster. Do either of you have any qualms with that choice?
I don't have a qualm with it. I will say, if I was picking from the Rangers, I'd go with Adam Fox, right-handed 25-year-old defenseman.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's 8 teams in the Metro, including the Penguins. You can't build a full lineup, but if I'm looking on the roster for each player that I want, I'm taking Adam Fox, right-handed defenseman. I think he's a Norris Trophy winner, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. That's what I thought.
Yeah,
so yeah, Adam Fox for me.
Okay, Robbie.
Yeah, I like
Kreider, right?
Kreider? No, Chris Kreider. I can't stand Kreider. Adam Fox.
Okay. I guess I was taking this maybe too literally, thinking that we're adding to the roster that we have. But I guess if we're starting from scratch with nothing, I don't even think I would take Fox still. I'd probably take Trouba.
Boo!
Yes,
boo this man. Boo this man.
No, Fox is, I mean, you don't just get right-handed Norris winning defenseman at 25 years old.
That is true, but Trouba, I mean, he we'll move on. So I guess 2 out of 3 say Fox. I would go for maybe a Kreider or a Trouba. But we'll move on to the Flyers, who are second in the Metro, which is just wild to think. From the Flyers, I'm taking Travis Konechny. Gritty, goal-scoring right winger, just a beauty of a player. He's a prick to play against. He could play up and down your lineup, but I'm going Konechny. What about you guys?
Konechny's a good choice.
It's probably, I mean, the Flyers don't really have too many great pieces in the middle of this rebuild right now. Konechny,
Who's that
Couturier.
center? Couturier. That's another one.
Couturier is a good choice too. Konechny, I think, is a little bit younger, but
Yeah.
Couturier is a good choice too.
Couturier also has a bad back, I think, but
I'd probably say Konechny too, just because he's a little bit younger than Couturier.
okay, we have a consensus on that one. We'll go to the Islanders now, and plucking from the Islanders, for me, it's got to be Matty Barzal. He played his junior out here in Seattle. He was the captain of the Thunderbirds. He is somewhat of a Ferrari parked in a cul-de-sac. I feel like that team's so defensive-mindedly, and that dude can just wheel around and create offense, but they keep him kind of in a cage. I'm picking Matty Barzal every day of the week and twice, if not thrice, on Sundays. What about you, fellas?
Zach Parise.
He's not even playing.
I could argue Horvat, but I like Horvat or Sorokin, the goalie.
Oh yeah,
But,
yeah.
I mean Barzal always feels like he scores against the Penguins, so maybe getting him away from that would be nice. But yeah, a couple nice choices out there. Not many on the island, but Barzal's a pretty solid choice.
Yeah, I agree. I think Sorokin's probably another kind of obvious one, but that Horvat too. He's a steady Eddie. All right, so yeah, Garrett, what did you say again? Did you chime in?
You know, Robbie brought up Ilya Sorokin. I didn't take Shesterkin when we were talking about the Rangers, so I think I'll go with Sorokin here.
Okay, fair enough. All right, next is the Carolina Hurricanes, and for me, the first person I thought of on the Hurricanes was Brent Burns, but then I kind of like backtracked a second, and I'm just like, dude, I mean, I'd take that Sebastian Aho or not Evgeny. What's the Andres? Is it Andres Svechnikov?
Andres Svechnikov.
His brother's Evgeny. Svechnikov, the guy who does the Michigans all the time. He's a good power forward for them. I'd probably take Svech.
Aho, I definitely like the Aho, but there's actually like Hurricanes. You also have to kind of think about, but once you look at the roster, some nice names there. But I really like Aho there.
Yeah, Robbie's right. I'm looking at the lines right now. Aho, Seth Jarvis.
Oh, that Jarvis. I love that Seth Jarvis, actually. Fuck, I think I might take him.
Martin Natras. I think Natras is due for a contract if he hasn't signed a new one already. It's a contract coming up for him.
Good player, too.
Yeah, I mean, Robbie's right. You do have to sort of sit back and think. Jakub Slavin on the back end. Snail, you mentioned Brett Burns. He's a little bit older, though, for my liking. I mean, Aho could be a number one center on many different rosters, in my opinion. Yeah. I forget who I've already taken previously, but for the heck of it, for this little experiment, I'll say Sebastian Aho.
Yeah, I think that's probably the obvious one with maybe some, some hat tips towards like Natchez and Jarvis and that dude Jakub Slavin, however you say it. That dude is an awesome defenseman, kind of underrated.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, now we'll move on to the rival Capitals. And for the Capitals, it's hard to think of a player that hasn't done some sort of emotional damage to each and every one of us that you would want to add to this team. But for me, it's obviously Tom Wilson. And maybe I would probably say also a TJ Oshie. What about you guys?
Man, that team feels so just odd. Like, I know they're just not great. They're not awful. They're not great. I mean, Oshie isn't what he was at one point, but he's not awful either.
Dude, Oshie is a third liner on any team right now. That's like that would be sick.
Yeah. I guess I could get down with TJ Oshie.
Not Tom Wilson.
I mean, no.
There's some hurt feelings there.
He was quick to put the fire out on that one. Yeah, I'm looking at these lines. I don't
Garrett
even
probably hates Tom Wilson for everything he stands for and represents.
Personally and professionally. I don't recognize half the people on this roster. And these lines were updated today. I'm looking at Daily Faceoff's line combinations. I don't know any half of these people. I'll say Dylan Strome, and I'll put Dylan Strome on line number 2 as my center.
None of us said Ovi. That's hilarious.
Man, right now I saw I saw it on Twitter literally like this afternoon, and somebody said that since November 19th, Tristan Jarry has more goals than Alex Ovechkin.
Yes.
Oh
It is
my
true.
god!
It is
so
true.
that tells you where Alex Ovechkin is at right now.
Very true. That Mantha's good. I thought Mantha was going to be better. I liked him in Detroit, but then I don't know. He's just this big, rugged winger. Anyways, all right. We'll move on. No Ovi from the Caps. The New Jersey Devils. Now, this one, they've got some budding superstars. I would assume the consensus is Jack Hughes, unless you guys have a crush on another guy.
I mean, there's a lot of interesting names there, but Jack Hughes, when he's playing at that level that he can, it's impossible not to pick Hughes.
You know what? I mean, yeah, the like Snail and Robbie said, Jack Hughes would probably be the easy out here, but there is a good bit of Timo Meier is projected right now, at least according to Daily Faceoff, on the third line. And I don't think Timo Meier is a third line winger.
Well, he's really struggling. He is not having a good season.
I see. I did not know that. So I guess that would make sense if he is getting a bit of a demotion in playing time. So I mean,
Jesper Bratt,
Alex Holtz is pretty young, if I remember. Looking on their back end,
they got a defenseman.
Don Marino.
Yeah, exactly. I love Jonas Siegenthaler's name. I just love the name Siegenthaler. So, but
to rolls off the tongue nice.
It really does. So, I will bet on Timo Meier to rebound, and I will take Timo Meier.
Timo Meier is a good one. So yeah, I don't see any qualms with either of those choices. And then skipping the Penguins, God, are they really second to last in the Metro?
Yeah, it's not great.
God. All right, the Blue Jackets. And I think that there's a bunch of good pieces on this carcass of a team. I would probably say Zach Werenski is just an awesome defenseman, left shot. And if it wasn't him, I do like their captain, Boone Jenner. He's a gritty. I think he plays center. Or he's probably a versatile guy, but he's a good player for them. And I've always had a soft spot for that Gabranson. That he had a cup of coffee in Pittsburgh, but they moved on from him rather quickly. Not gonna lie, he was like projected to be the next Chris Pronger when he got drafted 3rd overall. Never panned out that way, but he throws his weight around. He really kind of helps protect the net. I like that Gabranson, but probably Zach Werenski would be my consensus first choice.
Yeah. Again, a lot of big names on Columbus, not the best team, but I'm going young here. I'm going Adam Fantilli. I mean, if you're starting from scratch, you need a young centerman to build off of. And again, Fantilli he fits all that. Like, that is who he is. 3rd overall pick. Consensus, he could have been, if in any other draft, he could have been the 1st overall pick. He should have probably been the 2nd overall pick this year, but Leo Carlsson got taken ahead of him. But I'm going Fantilli here. Just you can't turn away the young 18-year-old center who's going to be a franchise piece for the next decade.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. And as a matter of fact, I'm jealous for Columbus fans because I think I've said on the podcast before, they really, outside of maybe Rick Nash, they really haven't had that prime player, that franchise cornerstone, that pillar. And Fantilli checks all of those boxes. I think he will be a pain to play against for the next decade plus. As a Penguins fan, there are some really nice names on this roster. Johnny Gaudreau, Fantilli, who else? On their back end, is that David Juracek? He's a young defenseman too, right? Like he was they invested some pretty high draft capital into him, if memory serves. Werenski, Snail already mentioned.
Kent Johnson, another good prospect. I think he spent a little time in the AHL, but Him and Bedard, I think, were teammates somewhere. Maybe he was up. Kent Johnson was in Michigan. I don't know, but that Kent Johnson kid is a player as well.
Patrick Laine is super duper streaky, and he really hasn't been himself since his early Winnipeg days. But if you bet on him to try and find his form, I think Patrick Laine is a pretty lethal goal scorer when he has his magic on. So who would I take? I mean, I would probably go with Robbie here and say Fantilli if we're building a franchise from scratch, because I agree completely with Robbie. If you're building a franchise, you want that cornerstone centerman. So I'd probably say Fantilli, but boy, Gaudreau would be a close second for me. Line would be a close third or fourth. But I didn't even mention Zach Rowinski, David Juracek, Jake Bean. I like Jake Bean I think he's a fringe top 4 defender. Right now they haven't projected it on the bottom pairing with Juracek, but there's a lot of individual, I think, good talent on this roster, but for whatever reason they can never bring it all together.
Yeah, they really haven't. How about this? So instead, we can't pick the Penguins, but if you could take one player from the Penguins without any implications, you can just drag their contract and put them in the garbage, and you never have to see or hear from them again. No penalties, and you can't say Jeff Carter. What player from the Penguins roster would you discard?
Ryan Graves.
Same here, Ryan Graves. I think between him and Jeff Carter, Ryan Graves' cap hit is much larger.
I mean, it's like 5 more years, and yeah, I mean, Jeff Carter, for as bad as the contract is, we know that he has like 50 games left in a Penguin uniform. I mean, at this point, you just suck it up, and maybe he plays 25 of them, and you just deal with it. But no,
dude, what is up with Ryan Graves?
It's Ryan Graves.
Dude can he's forgotten how to play hockey.
And we talked all summer about, and we sung the praises of Kyle Dubas. I'm not one to typically abandon ship this early on a player or a contract, but this ain't it, Chief. This ain't it. I don't know.
Well put.
Dubas has been lauded as so progressive and forward thinking, and I don't know what he was thinking giving out that contract, that term length to Ryan Graves on a lesser contract, on like a 2 or 3 year deal. Even if he had that cap hit, I'd be like, all right, it's fine. It's 2 seasons, season and a half, whatever. If he's not working out, you could probably find a trade partner. But the fact that it's like 5 seasons or 4 or 5 seasons after this one, that is just, that's not good, Chief. That's not good.
No, it's not, dude. But Dubas, for getting that Ludwig and that Ryan Shea or whatever, those have been bigger home runs by Dubas than one of the bigger trade or signings in Ryan Graves so far this season. That Ludwig I saw him paired with Letang, and he's getting like top 4 minutes at times last few games, and we're seeing that Graves put down there on the third pairing, which slowly kind of puts those defensive pairings in sort of a blender at times. But I mean, there has been like a massive reduction in ice time from Graves, because there is all sorts of chaos and shit happening when he's on the ice.
I just saw the other day that they just this past Sunday they put Graves with Carlson. So let's say a prayer for Erik Karlsson having to lug his carcass up and down the ice if he has to.
Jesus, Murphy. Yeah. Well, I think that's it for that question. Those are our picks. A lot of variety in our choices there, but you can kind of see where each of our headspaces are at when it comes to the Metro Division.
Yeah, I think those picks were a good representation of the kind of hockey that all three of us like to watch. And Robbie and I are probably more on the skill speed side of the game, but there's always a place in the game for those big brute forces that Snail loves. So you can't go wrong with either of these picks. And for that, like Snail mentioned, we wrap up the mailbag here. Barring something unforeseen as we close out here, this will be the final mailbag, I do believe, of 2023. And I believe we are going to reconvene in the new year on January 2nd to record the next mailbag. So, Snail, Robbie, do you have anything else you'd like to say before we close out the final podcast of this calendar year?
Nope. Thanks for listening. I mean, we're still gonna have some recaps, so
Yeah.
tune into those. But as for mailbags, no, good year. I mean, a lot of change, obviously. Garrett, from the beginning of the year when we were kind of blindsided on a random January, February
Yep.
day that we were gonna be yanked, and we didn't know what was gonna happen. I mean, we kind of thought it might be over there for a short while, but thanks to Fans First for bringing us in, and we kept it alive, and we've expanded. We now have a third host here, and from where the year started, it's pretty remarkable. We made it to the end, still in one piece. It's names different, but basically still the same.
Dude, I remember listening to that podcast of yours when you guys were talking about like the switch or whatever, or you guys were going to have some announcement coming up at some point. It was unsure if you guys would continue, but then
Yeah.
it was you guys wanted to. And I just remember being like, oh shit, this thing could be over for these guys.
Yeah,
here you guys are with me.
then we saw Snail like a poor abandoned puppy out in the cold. And we felt bad, so we kind of brought him on, and now we're one big happy family. And you know what? I will say this. We are still looking to expand heading into 2024. If you or someone is interested in working in video/audio production, hit me up on Twitter. Hit one of the other two hosts, Snail and Robbie, up on Twitter. We're always looking to expand and grow here at the Skating Penguin Network, and that will not slow down as we turn the page to 2024. So as we wrap up this mailbag, this edition of the mailbag, thanks to Snail and Robbie for putting up with my antics throughout the majority of this year. And for everyone else, we will talk to you all again in 2024. Thanks for listening.